Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You are at hashtag Secure the Grad, and this is our season finale for 2024. My name is Evodia Mohanyane, and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you are new and joining us afresh, welcome. You exactly at the right place at the right time. And if you are regular, welcome back to the tribe. We are very excited to host you today, and I I literally want to jump off my chair. I like it because it's no longer fake spring. It is officially spring. And I can tell you, spring has officially sprung here as hashtag Secure the Grad. And I hope that's the sense that you're getting, that things are about to shift in your life. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we've got a fire line up waiting up for you. And we're talking hashtag against all odds. It is that time of the year when it's particularly a bit tricky. We're feeling pressed, we're feeling squeezed on every side. And some of us are just about to throw in the towel and say, what does it matter? I'm just going to take it slow. Or, when they say we quiet quit, I wonder if some of you have already started quiet quitting. But don't worry, if that's exactly where you are, that's why we have this webinar today. And we have the kind of lineup that we have prepared for you. Now, we have a couple of rules that we want to take you through before we kickstart the webinar to make sure that we have a smooth and efficient time together. You'll notice that your microphones as well as your videos have been disabled, and that's just really to ensure that the conversation today can be smooth sailing. We also want to encourage you to join using your name as well as your surname. For those of you who are regulars, that is what makes you eligible to be a prize winner after today's webinar, or exactly in today's webinar. If you are watching us live, you can make sure that you throw your hat in the ring so that you can be chosen at the end of our webinar. Now, before that, we really pride ourselves and we want to get the conversation flowing. We want to hear your voice, although your microphone is disabled. How we're going to do that is we're going to pop up some polls on your screen and we'd like you to participate. Remember, when the poll shows on your screen, there will be a question. You just click the option that's most applicable to you, and then you click on the submit button and you'll see the poll disappear. So you're going to talk to us today? I bet you're going to. Right. Now that we have that out of the way, I want to give you a glimpse of who is in conversation with us. We have them all, from one generation to the next, from alumni to current student, from top management to top researchers to community builders, community changers. Listen, entrepreneurs, employees, we have them all. Hashtag Secure the Grad style. We don't do fake, baby. So listen, I'm super excited and I want to stick on script. My team is most probably saying, Evodia, please stick to the script. But you know how it goes when it's season finale. We want to make sure that we bring you the best of the best and the hottest of the hottest. Now, I want to ask and invite my esteemed panel this afternoon to switch on their cameras and give everybody a big wave as we quickly going to introduce to you. So what you see right now from our panel, we have Professor Paul Sithole, who is a social anthropologist, and she's also an expert in organizational change and qualitative research. God campus, if you are in the building today, Prof. Paul also is a COFC. They say, you know what they say, COFC for life. We wonder what happened to Vision 130. Hey, let's not throw shade right there. It is our season finale. So we also have Tshegofatso Thobane, who's a clinical project analyst. And Tshegofatso has really been one of the change agents at the UFS, as well as Bokang Fako. Last but not least, we have Chuma Memela. Very excited to have you on the panel with us, and a warm welcome. Ladies and gents, we're not going to waste time. We're going to because we have such a power-packed panel, we're going to jump straight into conversation. But before we do that, I'd like to see on the chat what's happening. What's the levels where you're at? Are you good? Are you trying to get there? Or you saying, Evodia, let's get going with this conversation. Give us some love on the chat. Tell us where you're joining us from. If you are watching the live recording, also comment and like, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right. Now that we have our speakers all lined up, I cannot see the camera. So the technical team is absolutely going to have to help me. I cannot see who has their cameras on and who does not have their cameras on at the moment. So let's see, Tshegofatso. There we go. Brave Tshegofatso. Tshegofatso, welcome. I know it's your absolute first time here at hashtag Secure the Grad. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in your role? So three questions. Tell us about yourself. What do you do in your role? And what does a typical day or week look like in your shoes?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much again. I'm actually very excited to be part of this program. I've been watching some of your episodes over the past few years, and I'm so happy that I'm actually part of it this time. So thank you so much. And also, welcome to our panelists and everyone that's actually watching and tuning in. So, as you've also introduced myself, my name is Tshegofatso Thobane, and I am a clinical project analyst. I work at CRISMO, which is a clinical research site management organization. And I have a background in molecular biology and biochemistry. So, I specialize in biochemistry and molecular biology. So, looking at the type of work we do, so we run a lot of clinical trials for new medication, basically drug development and also execute or actually testing of those specific drugs that we work with. I also noticed some of my colleagues are also part of the conversation, which is exciting. And looking at the roles that, or the work I actually do, I actually look at the preclinical project initiation activity. So looking at the budgets of how much a specific clinical trial will actually cost, what are the risks that are actually involved, the projects or the project timelines, how long that specific study will actually proceed. And also ensuring that I keep our internal and external stakeholders very much in tune with the dynamics of the projects that we are actually working with. And yeah, and looking at my experience in molecular biology and also my combined with my project management experience, it has actually equipped me with both the technical skills and the strategic insights that are very much necessary for one to be part of the clinical research space. And I think also, as you have just mentioned, I've also been part of a huge of wide variety of leadership. Was this leadership platforms in at the University of the Free State. And I think this has also given me a huge understanding in terms of what it entails for one to actually be whether a game changer or actually be part of the research industry. And I think looking at the day-to-day work, I'm gonna try not to, step into the NDAs because we sign a lot of NDAs, but I collaborate with my team to ensure that the clinical projects are actually running smoothly, I liaise with internal and external stakeholders. And I ensure as to balance my technical work with my strategic planning as to ensure that we better prepare for our project's next upcoming phases and keep aligned with our research goals. And I play a lot of a huge role in terms of the development of our research, some of the research engagements that we want to have. And yeah, that's basically what I do and the work that I do. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. It's been absolutely great to get to know you a little bit more and get to know Tshegofatso, who's a non-student. Sounds like you have quite a very interesting role, and we are looking forward to get into and digging a little bit deeper into your story.
Yes.
Bokang, welcome, and let's also hear from you a little bit about yourself, what your role entails, and if we had to step in your shoes on a normal weekday or a normal week in general, what would that look like?
Um, Good afternoon, everyone. I feel like I have nothing to offer now that Sithole is spoken, but it's okay. I'll try. My name is Bokang Fako. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I am currently a research assistant at the Free State Center for Human Rights. So I'll tell you a little bit about what the Free State Center for Human Rights is. The Free State Center for Human Rights is it's an interdisciplinary center where we deal with advocacy, research work, and legal practice. We focus primarily on human rights, socioeconomic rights, constitutional rights, and just do work towards transformation, towards advocacy, And my day-to-day life, my day-to-day work really entails research. I know it may sound boring, but it really is just, researching. We take on cases. around Bloemfontein, we're currently dealing with a lot of cases in small towns around Bloemfontein where we're looking into socioeconomic rights related issues. So my contribution to the team is to find relevant case laws, relevant articles that will sort of make an argument for us, so that maybe if we're presenting an issue at court, or if we are trying to, contribute towards making sure that certain right is realized. So mine is just to give some theoretical, some legal background into the matter. And I have the absolute pleasure of being here. I'm excited to be here, nervous, but excited. I'm glad to be part of this amazing panel. And I think I will be giving insight as both a student and a student leader, because I've done a lot of student leadership. I've worked alongside Tshegofatso at some point, where I've worked in the SRC and a lot of other student-based activities. So I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. So when Nalebo Berry Roo, Lintweiwani and like, all right, I see. I'm trying to match, so we have to make it a bit simple for everybody of, okay, so when Beru comes with these big English, it's the Bokangs behind that English. It's the Bokangs behind all of those cases. All right. So interesting work. And Bokang, welcome again. We're absolutely looking forward to having conversation with you. Let's see. Kuma, Prof. Pearl, where are you on my screen? There's Chuma. There's Prof. Great. So, Prof, a little bit about yourself. Now that you are out of the UFS, what does your role entail? And if we had to step into your shoes, what would that look like on a typical day or a typical week?
Okay. I'm a researcher. I've always been a researcher, actually. But of course, when you are in an academic environment, you get called into administrative roles, which is what I've just finished actually on Kwakwa campus. But being a researcher, you don't just do research in the traditional diagnostic and exploratory way that we do at university when we are training people to be researchers. I'm now a consultant specifically on organizational change management. In other words, my clients, or if you like, my patients, are the institutions themselves. Institutions often diagnose what they need and the kind of support that they need at any given juncture. And my particular expertise is really restricted to social research when they actually want to understand specific you really work on the institution itself, where they want to probably improve to align better with their strategic agenda. And the other specific area is really gender change management on my side. So a typical week for me is one where I'm back to working with teams, trying to crack what the client really wants, working and visiting clients to actually elucidate that our understanding is clear, and even perhaps to persuade them to add a little bit more of this and this, or to take things in a particular direction. And of course, then doing the work, as in like interviews where we need to reading a lot of policy and all of those kinds of things in order to be able to come at directed deliverables for that particular client. In some instances, and I'm not there yet because I have only just come back, when we finish our work, we then go on to assist them take baby steps to the new way of working before we leave them alone, because they're also experts in their own journey. That's practically what I do now. Thank you.
What an interesting journey. And I think one could say, what an interesting switch, but I think what an interesting transition into almost, I'm thinking all the complexities of student life, community, academia and having to transition that into bigger organizations. And I really look forward in later in our conversation to dig a little bit deeper into your story. Last but not least, Chuma, welcome with us. I know it's also your first time. We've got a lot of great first timers here with us. Chuma, tell us a little bit, what is it that you do, the AI guy? What does your typical role look like? Are you part of the alien crew? And what does a typical week look like in your space?
Evodia, my sister, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. I attended my first Secure the Grad event one, and it's such an honor and a pleasure to be invited as a speaker here today. So I don't take that lightly. My side, I would say I'm a smaller version of Prof. I wear many hats myself. But I think the most accurate description that I can give of myself is that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a consultant and I'm an AI advocate and a speaker. You see now, I said very briefly, but I'm expanding. So I do a lot of research, work as part of a team. We're a team of 4. We do a lot of work for government, informing government policy. One of my latest work is we are developing a EC strategy for township and rural economies. And that task has been given to the team that I am part of. Right. And then I've got, of course, my two entities on the side, which is Genius AI and Gambo. So Venus AI is just a consultancy company. I want to help businesses leverage artificial intelligence and get them up to speed with not 4 IR technologies, but 5 IR. And that Gumbo, of course, is a platform that we are building as a team for consultants, your profs of the world, to come on the platform and share some of the experiences that they've gained over 20 years, but also for people who are just freelancers, and have a skill to impart on other individuals. Then last but not least, as a way of plowing back into society in the same way that others have plowed into my life, I work as part of an NGO as a Chief Partnerships Officer. So I'm part of the decision making of that organization. And more recently, I've been tasked with start forming those relationships with organizations that can start pumping funds into the organization so that we can expand our programs, given that it's been there for 10 years and I've recently joined a few months ago. So that is my life. And then last but not least, my master's thesis, which is cracking my skull. I am getting there slowly but surely until we graduate. So in as much as I'm not a full-time student, I resonate with the goal and the stress of some of the students that are here with us today. Thank you very much.
Aklaleki kwa postgrad, Chuma, aklaleki. So
Tell me now.
now that you've touched on a little bit on the fact that you are still pursuing your studies, take us a little bit back of what your university journey, particularly in your undergraduates, what did that look like? And how have some of those experiences shaped your outlook on life?
Oh, let me go for that one. Evodia, my path has been an unconventional one, right? And given that it's been that way, I think I'm uniquely positioned to help a lot of people. So I finished high school in 2014, finished my matric. I went to NMU for 2 years. I lived the best life like any other 19-year-old. Eventually, I dropped out. I got my anniversary. I had to come home and sit down. Eventually, I picked myself up, went to the University of Fort Hare, and got a completely new degree. And there, of course, I had the backdrop of having failed a lot and not performing, like I did in high school. But it was an opportunity to start over. And at the end of my undergraduate, I finished my degree with a cum laude with 23 distinctions. And I finished top of my class in my honors year, right? And now I'm doing my master's. I also graduated from the University of Free State last year and the business school with a finishing mark of 89%, right? So this has been my experience, is that I have come from the from the far end, of failing to the extent of even dropping out, to being part of the 1% top shelf kind of students. And I like that contrast, and because I think it's more of a relatable story, because I think most people who are born in key society, for instance, have only grown up like that, and my part hasn't been a conventional one. So my university experience has been one of ups and downs. I've also failed tests too. I remember, if I can share a story, in first year, we're doing stats, there's something called derivatives in stats, and I got 4 out of 20. And I took that paper, and I tore it up. I was like, this is not my mark. So, it hasn't been a part of just continuous improvements. I think you have ups and downs in your student journey. And I think it's very important for students to understand that. Because some are chasing GP now, others have a guillotine hanging over their head. But it's important to understand that if it can be done, we are not foreign individuals. I am like yourself, and I mean, even worse than the situation others are right now.
I think that's a very interesting shift. And what I'm getting from your story is it's not been a story of linear success, but rather, peaks and valleys. And I want to dig a little bit deep there to just get a sense of, how did you transition from, or particularly what role did community and its support play in moving you from a point where you feel, look, it's almost end of the world, I have failed, I've dropped out, to reinventing your story and finishing off cum laude?
Thank you very much for that question. I think Evodia, it did not start off as a community, but I think the pivotal moment that really shaped my life, in my 2 years after I dropped out, I was doing a learnership at the shipping company MSC. And as part of that learnership, we had to do some studying. So I said, let me give myself an opportunity to see, do I still have brain? Because that was, of course, in question now, is that when I still have the intellectual capability to, be a high performer, so to speak. And I absolutely obliterated that leadership. So it gave me a little bit of that confidence prior to me registering at Forte. So when I registered at Forte, I took the stance that I don't want to have any friends anymore. I'm just here to get my degree in the prescribed time and get in and get out, right? But it didn't turn out like that. I happened to be friends with two also hardworking individuals, and we were just a close. It was just always the three of us, and I didn't want friends. I always was very strict on that I don't want to have a large group of friends. I've got friends at home, but being part of that close-knit circle of forward-looking individuals who are also on a path of continuous growth, I think that small community really kept me on my toes, because if there's one thing I can share maybe with a young person, they all have been told that your network is your network, right? Your network. But the comprehension element is not there when you're young. You hear these things about it's important to have a community, it's important to have a network, but you don't comprehend it until you become older and you understand how knowing so and so is able to get you, or get you 5 steps ahead, or for you to leapfrog. So being part of that small circle assisted me to get through school, because the environment was so competitive. And when you're in an environment of winners, it's so self-policing that you have to keep up pace, or eventually they will nudge you out of the group, unintentionally so. But that's how people who are hard workers and leaders operate. They don't have time to babysit people. So I think community in my student life played that role in my undergraduate years.
Very interesting there. So, Kuma, you have mentioned that you are what I would call a slasher. You are a student slash entrepreneur slash philanthropist slash go-getter slash everything. And the sense that we're getting is that you're also good at many of these hats, juggling many of these hats. How do you balance your current professional responsibilities and the demands that it bring with these long-term goals that you are also pursuing on the side? How do you keep that balance? Is there a balance?
My sister, I made peace with the fact that I'm going to live an unbalanced life for a while, and that's okay. I think that balance is a luxury for people who have accomplished great things later in life. But for us in our 20s, we must not be, we must not take that illusion. When you're young, you're full of potential. You have a lot of energy, and you have a very fuzzy idea of where your life is going to go and what shape it's going to take. And the quicker you can find what your life's mission and life's purpose is, the quicker you and the longer you can attend to that and live that life, right? So for me, I enjoy work. I enjoy being busy. I really enjoy being a productive individual. I don't impose this on anyone else because I understand we differ in temperament. I'm one of those guys where even if you put me in a forest, I will be there all day chopping trees. So it's not just about academics, but I am very displeased with myself if I'm doing nothing. But if I can answer your question, balance looks different for everyone, right? And this is what people need to understand is that balance for someone else might mean a 4-day week, right? Balance for someone else might mean they work 5 to 6 days and only rest on a Sunday. You know, that's sort of me. So my daily schedule, for instance, I wake up at 3, 4 o'clock every morning, right? I put for about 2 to 3 hours, take my dogs for a walk. Come in and do the normal 8 to 5 like everyone else, but I work from home. And then in the evening, I still have my graveyard session, which is from around 6 to 10 o'clock, try everything out. Do the same thing, right? But some days you find that the body is tired. So for instance, today I woke up, I slept at 10 and I woke up at 7, right? Which means I didn't wake up at 3 this morning. And maybe on a Sunday, I get to have my Sunday. That to me is sustainable and balanced. Someone else on a Friday afternoon, they just need to shut off work. That's balance for them. So it's very important as a student, as an individual, understand your goals, and that will dictate what balance looks like for you. And you don't have to take another person's version of what balance looks like because you have your own vision for your life. And I mean, that'll dictate how much hours you need to put in a day.
I guess the key is in knowing what works and aligning that with what you need to achieve, as you said. So,
Indeed,
Kuma,
indeed.
in wrapping up our conversation for now, what advice would you give to students, but also people who are transitioning and becoming young professionals? We have quite a number of students that are working part-time or even full-time while studying and trying to build a career. What advice would you have for them in trying to set things up and adapting goals as they go along, especially when they face the unexpected? You know what they say, life happens when you least expect it to happen.
Gloria, thank you very much for this question. Let me be very blunt and very honest with our students today. You need to be very aggressive about how you are going to approach your life, right? Why am I saying this? The employment space and life in general is so competitive, especially in today's time. We are thinking that graduate unemployment is a reality now. I did check the other day, we've reached 20%, right? And part of those 80% are employed are in they are working as interns. So it's not so being looking at. I'll share my story, for instance, very briefly. Right after I had graduated, come out and finished top, being also rejected by over 300 companies. Right, and even after I worked my first 6 months as a lecturer, my contract was not renewed. So I had to take my skills and apply them and create employment for myself. Now, of course, I've reached a state of stability. I'm a full-time consultant. I have no desire to go back into the corporate space because I'm focused on building this. But as a word of encouragement to maybe people who are transitioning, or maybe some of them are actually in that position, let's be very aggressive with the field that you want in life and take the bull by its horn because it is so competitive, and you need to have a way of driving attention toward yourself. One of the ways in which I do this is LinkedIn. You can't afford to be a professional and not be on LinkedIn because there is so much traffic going on social platforms that you need to constantly tell the world that, hey, I'm this person, this is what I do. Give me opportunities. You can't just have a ghost account being there. You literally have to be aggressive about it. And if I would go back a few years back, that's what I would say to my younger self. And I really wish that other students can do that, just take the ball by its horns. So that's my advice to students and people who are transitioning into the world of work. And best of luck more than anything.
Kuma, I think that is such an inspirational story of triumph, but a story also filled with a lot of twists and turns. I don't know if you guys heard Kuma. Even after he was a cum laude graduate, was rejected with about 300 applications. So what does that tell you? Life is not exactly as you think it's going to turn out. Kuma, I'm thinking, I told someone the other day that I was a secretary with a statistics degree. So life has to start somewhere. So I love the advice. Know exactly what you're going to do. Don't take any prisoners when it comes to your goals. Go hard, go aggressive. As you heard Kuma, we're going to circle back to you later. But for now, please drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat. You also heard LinkedIn is very important. Our first poll has just come up on your screen. We want to know, what area of personal development do you find most challenging right now? Is it building that resilience? Is it goal setting and persistence? Is it maintaining a growth mindset? Or is it finding a support network? I know for some of them are like, I'm an ambivert, I'm an introvert. And I know this might be a particularly challenging one. Or is it managing self-care and well-being? You can click your option. I've just selected mine and submit it. Right. So, Tshegofatso, let's circle to you. So you can see this month we are starting with the gents. Last month we had a full females panel, and listen, it was all the females. So, Tshegofatso, let's circle to you. Not so far out of university, your journey is also a bit still fresh. Talk to us a little bit about what did that look like, and how have these experiences that you've walked, both undergrad and postgrad, shaped your future goals as well as some of your aspirations?
Thank you so much for this opportunity again. I think looking at Kuma's story as well, it's quite important to understand that when you're in university and as soon as you leave university, those are two different landscapes. And it's really important to understand automatically when you leave the university space, you leave a university space with just your qualification. You leave your university without any form of experience, no technical skills. This now it's for a student that went to university to just study and get their qualification. So basically, when you leave with no formal experience, you leave with no technical experience. And I think that was the most challenging thing for me, going into the industry and actually finding out that irrespective of you, I hold a master's degree in biochemistry, 3%, 2% away from a cum laude, undergrad degree in cum laude and an honors and a master's. So I got to understand that those qualifications don't necessarily mean so much to some organizations if they are not accompanied by some form of technical skills and some form of experience. And just to also support what you, Ms. Evodia, has also have said and what Kume said, I've also had my fair share of working in a bakery, to try and uplift my own personal skills and my own personal development, so that I'm better prepared for the industry that will be willing to absorb me. So looking at some of the experiences that have shaped my future goals and aspirations, luckily for me, and I'm saying luckily for me because I had the opportunity to participate in all different types of activities in the university that were not necessarily beneficial for my what I was studying for. And at the time, it didn't make sense until I had to leave university and actually get into the industry, whereby I had to explain that no, I actually have experience because I was an SRC member who led a lot of policy review processes. Now, that gives you different types of technical skills that when you present yourself to any form of industry, because another important thing I think I'm going to emphasize on is being able to express your technical skills when you get into the industry. Because remember, again, you don't have any form of experience, you don't have any form of technical skills unless you can align whatever you have done in university to what you want to do in the industry space. And I think for me, it actually gave me so much. I actually found out that I have an experience of like over 7 years, 7 years of experience because I've been in university for 7 years with different programs throughout. And looking at that, these leadership roles have actually shaped me to approach my work with more emphasizing more on collaboration, integrity, resilience. And I think looking ahead, my specific goals, I would say that to actually continue to what's this to contribute to projects that drive your own positivity, like ensure that whatever you do actually aligns with what you actually want to do. So I always say to myself that if you have specific passions, make sure that your passions align with what you foresee yourself doing, and that also reduces the difficulty of you working towards that, because I mean, like, whatever you love, it becomes much more easier to do. So if your career goals align with your passions, what you're passionate about, it will make it easier. It's no longer you working, it's basically you just actioning out your goals, because there's a difference between you working towards something and you actioning out a specific goal. So that's what I would actually have to say. Participate as much as you can, develop yourself, have that experience people don't regard as experience, have those technical skills that actually, when there's a selection interview and you both of you guys are actually the same with qualification, what makes you stand out? And I think those are some of the most impactful things I would actually share in terms of the experiences that I've actually went through and how they have actually shaped my goals and my aspirations. At some point, I found myself as a sales executive, found myself, because remember, I was a prime, I had to sell, certain thing, I had to sell cupcakes. So at the end of the day, these type of things actually allow you to be able to bridge the gap between your scientific research expertise and you actually finding impactful solutions within your community. And I think that's how I would actually answer that specific question.
Very interesting. Because one of the highest student employers at the University of the Free State, one of the things we usually get is you find a brilliant student, brilliant. I mean, they have nothing under 70. If you look at their track record and you look at their academic transcript, and then you look at the CV and you ask yourself, but what did you do in the 4 years of university when you were here? A lot of students say, I don't have work experience, and I think what you're highlighting is that there is an opportunity while you're studying. So tell us, what is your against all odds story? And what did you have to overcome, particularly trying to pursue your academic career and also starting up as a professional?
Okay. I think that's a very important question for me. Um, so I would say there's three. I will briefly summarize why I say there's three. One, automatically when I come from Pretoria, Soshanguve, so it's a township in Pretoria. And coming from, I think this is a story for every university student or an aspiring professional, that we come from, disadvantaged what's this backgrounds or communities. I wouldn't say disadvantaged because it had a lot of love and support. So it's very important to also understand how we justify or how we present an unfortunate background. So for me, it was, well, yeah, it had a lot of love and support. But now the issue, when you go into university, you have to get yourself into university, have to pay registration fees, have to actually cover those specific aspects. So I think for me, it was very important that I had to the first one, I had to make sure that all my documents, all my credentials, my marks actually allow me to get the sponsorships that I would need to be part of to get access into university. And I always say that university is very difficult because it's very difficult to get in. It's also very difficult to get out. And I think students understand why I say that. So it's very difficult to get in. So I managed to get in with I think I managed to get 5 distinctions for my matric in 2015, and then that brought an influx of what's this acceptance letters from different universities, and I think it was 13 or 14 if I'm not mistaken. and I had to choose from there. So I think it's always important that you put yourself in a position whereby you choose the opportunities and they don't actually choose you. And I think I will explain as we go, as we process as we go through the conversation. I think another important aspect, once I got into university, now because I was so involved in community engagement, leadership, projects, and all of those, I found myself in a position I lost myself because I no longer understood why I was studying science. If I'm always in politics, I'm always in, leadership, I'm always in that. And that also caused a conflict of interest in such a way that I no longer had time to spend with my academic, stuff and all of that. So that was another challenge that I actually experienced, that how do I then move from just being being able to actually balance out all of these issues, all of these activities that I'm actually doing, because now I started getting emails, say we don't see you graduating, say, because by the time I'm supposed to be studying, I'm at main gate closing down the main gate, because there's politics, there's that and that and that. So I had to find myself in a position whereby I realign and I refine myself and reset goals to ensure that I overcome being overactive, and there's also over participation, and also actually being actually being a student at the university and actually succeeding with what you need to do. So there's a lot of time management that comes into play. Like Kuma, I also like a bit of technology, so I'm a CRM person. So I make sure as to use all the CRMs that I have to actually structure the time frames that I need to achieve certain goals and certain activities, both for my leadership expertise and also for my academic endeavors. So that's why I think I managed to get the cum laude in my honors, also in my BSc degree, and also be able to complete my honors degree. The one that was mostly tricky was the masters, because the masters, now I had a lot of more what's this activities on my plate, including the SRC and ISRC. But at the end of the day, the time management, aligning your passions with your purpose, aligning everything together, actually allowed me to be able to succeed and actually pass in that. And I think another important thing I need to highlight is that wherever you find yourself in, you need to ensure that you identify your surroundings. Why I say that, it's very important to understand where you are. You are in the University of the Free State, that has a wide variety of resources and platforms that are there to support you. And I think one thing that I did for myself, I identified people. So I identified Miss Evodia at Secure the Grade, I Vusi Galani at CTL, who, where, and you understanding these, because these people are resources. These are the people that help you, support you in terms of being able to set your what's this academic advising, understanding your timetables, understanding if you need time in your exams. And that's how student leaders are also supported in terms of what they need to them actually not forgetting why they're actually at the university. And I think that's how I managed to overcome and pass through with the last qualification that I was actually doing. Now, when I thought that was all the challenges that I actually faced, when I left university, I faced the 56% youth unemployment challenge in South Africa. Is it 56%? So that's the most challenge that I actually I actually found myself in. I think I have over 300 in LinkedIn DMs to I send DMs to different company leaders to ask for opportunities. And I think out of the 300, I think 20 responded, or 20 or less responded. I sent about 1,000 emails to different industry leaders, and to see that even if you have a master's with cum laude, no one is taking you, will bring you down to earth to say that a dog, like, there's more that needs to be done in terms of that, and also your own personal development. And I would think out of that 21 person or one DM actually responded, and it was a fruitful endeavor. So I would say that always make sure you network and you actually express yourself on these platforms to show what skills you have. And I think that's how those are my challenges that I've actually experienced. And currently now, I would say that you may be looking at one of the strategic plenaries for your new medications in South Africa. And I'm quite excited for that. And I think that's how my journey has unfolded. Thank you.
Very interesting. I think your stories are very similar, that I think the biggest thing I'm getting is also that as you transition, there's another mountain waiting for you as you triumph here and you get your pearls of wisdom. You're going to use that up in trying to accomplish or overcome the next challenge. So you spoke a bit about the role that the UFS played, and I think that's very important and it's key to making sure that you come out. One last question I want to hear from you, Tshegofatso, is what insights do you have for students, especially as they transition from undergrad to postgraduate studies and having to do a bit of both, juggling work and studying at the same time? Because I guess it's the reality for many of our students that they don't have the luxury to just be a student. For some, because of financial reasons, some because of their career goals. What advice would you have in managing these transitions?
I think the most important thing, one is that you set a lot of goals for yourself. And when you set specific set of goals, it actually shows you what you need to plan for. So these are objectives that you set for yourself, actually give you an idea what is it that you need to plan for over time. So if it's this year and then you know that you're going to do your master's next year, actually setting specific, not just goals, specific goals, like, I want 50-60% in this or in this specific module. That gives you an idea that what is it that you need to do to achieve that specific objective. And I think for me, that's what I always do. Even with some of the mentees that I have from different places or different organizations, I would say that it's very important to understand where you want to find yourself in. So if you want to be a top student, for example, part of the golden key, it's very important to understand that then your academic excellence then comes into, like, it's very highly regarded in that. And for you to excel academically, what is it that you need to do? What structures are there in place for you to be able to to be supported in order for you? Because we can't do everything on our own. There was a time whereby I thought that everything it's possible to do. It's not that easy. It's very important to understand that for each goal you need your community. And I always say when I was in race that the community doesn't start when I step out of race, but the community is in the race that I actually stay in. So you have people that have different skills, even if they're not studying what you're studying, but they were good in maths. Ask those people to actually help you with that specific module that you're actually doing, and be very specific with your goals. And I think the second thing, because we actually tend to get tired of our goals and our what's this what is it that we want to achieve. And I feel like each and every time you align your specific goal with your specific passion, if your passion is music and you know that you study music and your passion is music, make sure that you do everything that aligns. Do SER, do all the different type of activities that allow you to express your passion while also making it easy for you to achieve those specific goals. Align your passions with your goals. And I think that has helped me so much. Specific goals. And also, if you going into postgrad, make sure that you understand what it will be needed or expected of you in postgrad. Some of us, we were primed before we got into an honors degree. We realized when we're inside the honors program while being primed that, what, this is not working out. We found ourselves in positions whereby you are closing down a gate, but you also need to sample at the university labs. So, these conflicts, of course, when you're in student leadership, there's a lot of what's this clash in terms of beliefs and policies and principles, but you need to do what is it that you need to do at that specific time. I think networking a lot. I can't over or underemphasize networking. Make sure that you network to a point that you no longer go out for opportunities. Some of them just present themselves to you. And I think that's something that's very important for me to have highlighted in this session. Yeah.
Very inspiring. So some polls that I want to drop, guys, that Tshegofatso highlighted is, if you're not actively pursuing your goal, and Chuma said the same thing, it's not a goal, it's a wish list. It's like my children writing to Santa every year. So I make my children write notes to Santa. I told them Santa isn't real. Santa's mom and dad. So they have to write like a long wish list. And towards Christmas, we say you're only going to get 5. So pick the best 5 from your wish list. And I want to say, ladies and gents, listening to these stories, these people are serious about their goals and they're actively reviewing them, actively pursuing them. So if you're one of those people that are scared of looking at your goals that you wrote in 1 January 2024, the year of acceleration, then you are playing. But remember, it's never too late to start putting some fuel to those goals. And I love what you said, Tshegofatso, network. So I want you to look at everybody that's in this webinar. Go onto the participant list, the top of that list, the bottom of that list. There is your future employer. There is your future team leader. There's your future someone who's going to report into you. There's someone who's going to fund your business venture. There's your future client, your key partner, right there in the webinar. So I love what you said. The community doesn't start when we leave, but right here where we are. So we're going to circle back to you in our Q&A segment. Thank you so much. Please drop your LinkedIn profile as well, that we get to follow you and follow your journey. Now we're going to move on to Bokang, from one student leader to the other, from one trailblazer to the other. Bokang, has your story been a bit different? And what did that sound like? And how did that shape your particular outlook and your current journey that you're on?
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
You are clear.
Perfect. My journey has been, a little bit of the same or different from Chuma's and Tshego's. So I'll just give a little bit of context about my experience in high school and then transitioning to university, and then from university to transitioning into a working space. So my general university experience has been humbling, very humbling. And, I'll detail into it as to why. But in high school, I was the brilliant child, the star child, the one who was getting all the distinctions, getting all the certificates. I was even LRC president at some point, So high school was an exciting space for me, right? So now I finished matric and I need to transition into a university space, because if you're brilliant and you're passing so well, everyone expects you to be at university, except I didn't go to university immediately after finishing my high school. I took a gap year, for obvious reasons. There wasn't no money for me to go to school. So I started working and volunteering in that year. I remember I was working for the Department of Social Development at some point, and then I was volunteering for the SAPS at some point in all of that year. And I think there was, I don't necessarily want to call it an awakening, but that gap year was there was some sort of awakening in me. I learned a lot of stuff. I established my interest. I sort of knew then where do I want to go, what kind of work do I want to do. And this is why I always say that the work that I do must always be transformative or impactful. And I think my gap year is the one that, gave me that sort of leeway to understand the kind of work that I want to do. All right, all good and well. I do my gap year. I'm working, I'm volunteering, I'm learning from people, I'm meeting people, and obviously everyone is asking at the time, why aren't you in school? Why aren't you in school? And I'm explaining the dynamics, and some people get it, some don't. And then I get into university the following year. And my getting into the university the following year was, I cannot spend another year at home. Although I wasn't just, sitting leisurely, but I made a commitment to myself that I cannot spend another year in this town, because there's somewhere I want to be. There's something else that I want to do, and this is no longer it for me. This is too small for me, right? And then I spent a year at UFS doing some other degree. I think it was in public administration. But I knew even in that this isn't the thing for me. This is, it's along the lines, but it isn't a thing for me that I want to do. And then I moved from public administration to LLB. And it was in that way, I guess a lot of things were now, gaining motion. I got into my LLB degree. It was exciting to learn, and it was challenging at the same time. I keep telling people that, I also had the experiences of a typical student, where, you know, you're failing certain modules, you're getting depressed, you know, because everything is so demanding. You're alienating yourself because it's a new space, there's cultural shock. You don't know who your friends are, you know, you're just alone and trying to figure life out. So you can end up being alienated and feeling isolated. But what happened with me is then, in trying to figure all of these things, I end up in student politics, you know? And I wasn't surprised myself that I ended up in that space. But I think back at home, everyone was like, my sister, what are you doing? Can you just focus at school and stop all the other things that you're doing? But I, you know, I know that there's a certain purpose that I need to serve, and I feel like I need to be in this space to serve it in that way. So that's how I end up in student politics, and then got voted into the SRC vice president. I was leading in the EFF student command at some point. I was closing gates in Tshegofatso at some point. But in all of that, being involved in all of that, there's still a degree that I need to finish. So obviously the degree is suffering. And I think if there's one thing I could redo at that time is, you know, learning the importance of balancing things, because it is possible to do everything all at the same time as long as you have discipline and balance. And I think that's something I lacked. And then from there, while I'm still undergrad, I decided to start a student organization, because I now have the language for things that I want to do. I understand the politics of the things that I want to do. And then I started an organization called the Collective, which is more of a feminist think tank where we think about social issues from a feminist perspective, thinking about gender advocacy, thinking about LGBTQIA+ issues, thinking about disability issues as well. So that's how I started the Collective, and then graduate from that. And then now it's okay, what do I do? You have an LLB degree. What do you want to do? And I've always sort of known that I don't want to go into litigation. I don't want to go into corporate law. And, you know, I believe that politics and law are intertwined. So I need to find something that inclines me towards that. And I guess that's how I ended up in more of the research and advocacy and transformative work. And I'm even registered for a master's right now, which, you know, adds on more into the work that I'm trying to do. So I think for me, my university experience, like I said, humbling, but that experience has informed a lot of my life's trajectories. It has informed the things that I want to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So Bokang, very interesting journey, and a lot of discovery and self-discovery, and, you know, trying to find out how do I fit in this space and how can I excel in this space. Do you have mentors or particularly role models who have inspired you to persevere, or people that have really helped you steer the ship? And if so, why would you say mentorship and having particular role models is something that's very important or a critical component of navigating life?
You know, when I was preparing for this session, I was reading some of the questions out loud to my friend to say, one of the questions, do I have a mentor? And I started interrogating myself. So I was introspecting myself, like, do I have a mentor? And then I realized I don't have mentors in the traditional sense of the word, you know, in the traditional practice of mentorship. I don't have a person I can call and say, hey, can we talk about my career perspectives? Can we talk about the decisions I'm trying to make in as far as career is concerned? But I think what I have is a community, and let me explain why. I don't have mentors in the traditional sense of the word, but I have built a community that directly or indirectly has served as mentorship for me, right? I you know, in the spaces that I've worked in, when I was working in the Pretoria High Court, I met a lady called Nonhlanhla Khumalo, and she was my supervisor at the time, and but someone else was working under her. She was just my superior. And, you know, I'm having conversations with Nonhlanhla in the office, and I'm realizing, you know, this person and I were more or less the same kind of people. You know, we have the same story, we have the same purpose. And if she can be where she is right now, I'm pretty sure I can learn a lot from her. So she's someone I can text from time to time to say, hey, how is it going? What's happening in the world? And then we end up having conversations that end up into something else. I remember I was having a conversation with Advocate Mokwane last year, and we were having a conversation, and then it ended up into, what is it that you want to do with your law degree? What do you want to do in advocacy and gender space, But I was also a part of the Future Elect program, where it trains people that want to work in public service or politics. And what Future Elect did for me was also give me a community of people with the same sense of purpose that I have. So everyone that was in the program with me is someone that's already working in public service, someone that's already in academia, someone that's already working in politics. So I have access to those kind of people, and I can have conversations with them about life, about networking. But I've also learned that some of my mentors are actually my peers. Because you make friends in your leadership space, you make friends in when you're studying, and everyone else has their own take their own direction of life. But from the way they make decisions, you can learn a lot from them. And I think it also stems from the thing Tshegofatso was mentioning about what is it, networking, because networking is very important, and I think networking is also part of building a community. And I think what's also important is just networking with the people around you, and not necessarily networking trying to find an executive, someone who's superior than you, but having your friends who are doing different things in life can do a lot for you as an individual.
I think that is very, very key. Thanks for highlighting that. So I saw one of the people in the chat said they follow some people on LinkedIn, and that is how they're gaining from mentorship. So nice that you highlight that there's also mentorship right there in your communities, in your community that you serve with. I want to maybe move a little bit to you sound like someone, and in your story, someone that is quite self-reliant, someone that digs a little bit deep within themselves. So how do you remain optimistic? And what challenges have you faced? What has been a particular challenge? If you can highlight one challenge for us, and how have you used, what resources have you pulled together in trying to navigate out of this challenge?
Like I was saying earlier on, I think for me, I've established very early in life that I want to do transformative work. I want to do impactful work. And I remember reading an essay by I think it was Toni Morrison, who was talking about we won't always get the chance to do the work that we want to do. But show up for that either way,
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I have comprehended is that my work is deeply personal. It's also deeply political, but I can do all of that while maintaining professionalism. So I'll give you an instance when I was working in the High Court. So obviously now it's a whole new kind of environment. I haven't worked in the court before. I don't know the ins and the outs. It's a whole new city. It's a whole new people. And it's my first 9 to 5. So I'm there every day. I'm there all day. So it's obviously exhausting, and but I have to adjust. And we're given this very difficult research task that we have to do. And sometimes you're expected to know this kind of things. And I mean, when you're in the interview, you said, I can work well under pressure. Now the pressure is there. You have to work well under it. And my thing was, I actually can't do this. I don't know how to do this thing. And you know what? Why can't I just say, no, I can't do it. Can someone else do it? But then I remembered that the thing that has always kept me going, or that has kept me intact, is showing up for the work either way, and learning even in the challenge, right? So I sit down and I read. It's gonna take time, the 10 overtime, it's gonna take a bit. longer, but I sit with the work and I'm challenging myself because I come out of the work a better person, right? So I think that's what has inspired me. And when I say my work is deeply personal, it's deeply political, I'm thinking again about this essay that I mentioned by Toni Morrison, and of course I'll share it because Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks, James Baldwin speak a lot about the importance of showing up for the work, even if it's difficult, because it's impactful work, it's transformative work. Someone has to do it, and you said you'll be that person, so might as well.
Absolutely love that. And I think that is so essential. I think many of us underestimate the power of showing up, even if we don't have it all together. So thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to circle back to you just before we move to the Q&A segment to wrap the conversation up a little bit around what are key lessons that you've learned in your journey, and how could you, what can students take out of your story around the value of resilience and perseverance? So I'm going to park it right there. I want to say to our audience, I see a lot happening on the chat around job opportunities on campus. I don't know if you've seen the follow me posters everywhere around campus, Bloem, Kwakwa, South. That is the UFS career pathway. Please make sure that you join the career pathway. If you haven't read your emails, that's another thing that might not get you employed. You might be missing out on absolutely wonderful opportunities because you're not reading your emails. For those of you who are also entrepreneurial and want to, you say I have a side hustle, but I'm not sure I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm sure I'm up to something. The University of the Free State also has a business incubator that they've started. And that, remember, if you can check out our masterclass content on Instagram to find out more about Jabulani Nkosi, who is one of the business coaches that is there for free if you are a registered UFA student. Now we're going to circle back. We're going to move to Prof. Paul, who's going to talk a little bit to us around, being on the other side. I think many of us are still early in our careers, mid-career, pursuing the goal. Prof. Paul, you have moved out of being early career, you've moved out of being mid-career, and you are a seasoned professional, seasoned researcher, but also a seasoned entrepreneur. Talk to us a little bit about what your career trajectory has been like, and what are some of those highlights, but also some of those valleys that you've encountered in this journey.
Thank you, Evodia, and thank you to the fellow panelists. I don't know whether I should be saying anything by now, except to acknowledge that the many stresses that I had during their several iterations of why they closed the gate. They were closing the gate against me. But that's a lighter note. I really wanted to share my story against the backdrop of positioning this generation of today by sharing the challenges of my story within the challenges of the previous generation. And for me, I wasn't going to really talk about the current challenges of being a student today, because my environment was so different. And I wanted to talk about the pressure that we all have towards changing the social circumstances of the youth, especially in the wake of things that are easy to bend about in our reports around the triple challenge of poverty, economic unemployment, and all of these things that we say, to a point where we acknowledge that we are living in an environment of more than 50% of unemployment. It's not something that we must take lightly. As we motivate, we must acknowledge that we are motivating all of you in the context where we have a major challenge to shift this. And I wanted to latch on your secure the grade program in the way that you've named it, and your slogan of against all odds in order to do this, because it is securing that grade that can make you sit in tables that will talk about these things in the first place. So it's very, very important that we, even if we are hurrying to talk about the work environment and all of those things, I would like everyone to secure the grade. I would like everyone to know that the odds are unimaginable. And if I am going to tell a story about myself, it's not because I want to say that that generation had more challenges or that my own challenges were unique. It is to acknowledge that you shall secure this grade against unimaginable odds. Some of them will be experienced by you. That's why I commented on one of the speakers, who was the last speaker, who was talking about some get it and some don't. Some won't get your challenges. They won't. They are invisible odds. Anyway, I want to say that the core message that I want to bring with a little bit of a generational confession is that you need to be given the freedom and the leeway to conquer the challenges of your time. So in our bitter fixing of each other because of the previous political struggles as the previous generation, and the capturing of various sectors, especially the economic sector, for reasons that are not always loyal to this country and this continent, we have prevented you from exercising your generational right to exercise to face your own challenges. And by making you believe that we must micro validate you as this generation. So I really wanted to say that for these big missions that we are confronted with, the unemployment, it's going to get to a point where you must be frustrated. You must confront these challenges. I'm talking about you communally here, as opposed to all of the appreciated inputs around strengthening you individually. So what I wanted to say basically is that there's got to be a point where, in addition to all of the grit and the strength and the aggressive entrepreneurial spirit, you are actually also going to mobilize support so that we sit in tables confidently with the grid behind us to confront these challenges. Anyway, to my story. I'm born of a family that was 7 people, including our parents, 3 girls, 2 boys, and I was the eldest. Went through Bantu education schools, and 7 of them, thanks to my father, who was a migrant and had to take the family to all of these places, disjointed kind of schooling, changing of subjects, and the works. And I'm coming from the kind of Bantu schooling that was, it's not just, when we talk about Bantu education, we're not just talking about, the fact that it was substandard. We're also talking about brutal cruelty, where every year after matric, we knew, for example, that there will be a bus that will be paid for by people in the community, for people to go into that bus and go and beg someone called Drea in Pretoria to release results for some of the schools whose results were not released. You know, some kind of a whole systemic molestation of a Black child at the time, with some people who never recovered from it because they never were able to then go to university. Against that backdrop, me going to a University of Durban, Westville, a former Indian university, very excited, having dropped out of my science background because maths in that year was not released, but I got sufficient points to get me into social sciences. Nonetheless, appreciating that many of my fellow scholars were not there, just moving along with what I had. BA at UDW, BA honors, things go so well that actually anyone who had any dealings with my work would be the first one to say, look, you've got to apply somewhere and go and just go. I got a bursary that I practically didn't work for, in any big way for masters in South Africa. At the same time, I eventually got something for overseas, and so I had to apologize to the other one where I had started and went overseas. Did my MPhil at Cambridge and did my PhD there. I don't want to dwell in each and every step of this, but what I do want to say is that not even in Cambridge were things easy. It's not easy to swing from environments that expect to validate you as a Black child, worse as a female Black child, to negotiate a fair chance of being an analyst and an emerging expert, which is where I pitched myself from having read so much and from having read so much. So even the Cambridge experience, insofar as it was offering itself to being overly tutorial rather than engaging with an emerging expert, wasn't an easy environment to deal with to some extent. But we'll leave those things to other seminars related to postgraduate issues. But the long and short of it is that I want you to know that you must secure that grade against odds of your generation and against your personal odds, because those are the things that will qualify you to sit in specific tables. One of the important things that was said to me when I first joined university, and incidentally, it was said at Wits, because my marks were so good in up to what is now called grade 11, I got invited into an induction program at Wits, but because the Department of Education couldn't release some of the marks, I never got to go back to Wits. But I went to the induction program, and there was a CTL equivalent person there who said to me, if you don't, to all of us actually that were there, if you do not, if your education cannot change you and your immediate environment, then your education is a waste. So basically, that haunted me. If I don't think that Wits knows that it donated something to me, because I was never formally enrolled there, thanks to the circumstances. But that stayed with me. And that made me for a very long time, in terms of at every point of my life, wondering whether there is impact in the immediate environment where I am, and there is impact even in using each position that I am at. So at a time of exiting my PhD, it was still difficult times. I went into 3 months contract this, 6 months contract that, and obviously my passion was academia. And then I eventually landed at a university where, because there was anger about transformation all over, they named a certain positions affirmative action posts. Actually gave that name. I mean, if you are on NGAP today, imagine sitting in a position that is called an affirmative action post. It was the first decent contract beyond a 6 months. So I'm sitting there in a position with a system that is actually insulting the incumbents of this particular position. I'm sitting there being the first Black woman lecturer in that particular department, where not even students are welcoming, because in an environment where students were would only know a Black woman as a carer at home, and sometimes not even a carer that was well treated, someone who did everything that no one wanted to do at home. All of those white and Indian students felt insulted by having this to go to university and then finding this person trying to teach them. Imagine what the feedback forms were, because after if the evaluation forms were saying, they were talking about anything from my accent, which I thought wasn't bad, by the way, it was still like this, about all sorts of things. And in fact, they would walk straight to my colleagues to get an assurance that what they are learning is what they are supposed to learn. So those are the kinds of things that one had to go through in particular systems. In addition to all these kinds of things, you are sitting with angry colleagues, basically angry colleagues, because there is enforcement of transformation, which squeezes resources of people they would like to enter the system towards this transformation nonsense. So those are the kinds of things, and you will encounter different challenges for your system. But I'm just highlighting these because I want to make a few points. I will close shortly, Evodia. The career, moving on, had lots of things that one is conquering, but you must know that if you are a Black woman and you are not deputizing, when in fact you qualify for the main job, you are lucky. Even to this day, actually, women are in some kind of menial, what I call in my writings, menial ditch. And that's the story that's not just academic, but it is actually real. In 2024, we're still talking about unequal pay grades. We're still talking about soccer teams that must, or not only soccer, but female teams that must scrounge so that we can appease them because they want something. All those kinds of things. But what I'm saying is that you have an environment that needs people to work on. And if it isn't personal issues that bite at you, such as the things that I'm talking about me, if it is the more than 50% unemployment rate, it deserves a reaction from this particular generation, because we, this generation, are still today reciting all of the things that we did in 1976. We're still reciting the prior achievements, which we must be appreciated for, but we must release this generation to actually deal with the matters of today. I want to, in closing, and I won't go into the whole trajectory, we can talk about that of my career and other things, but I wanted to say to you as this generation, and I hope that I have couched my space in speaking about communal, generational issues rather than personal, is that if you do not realize by now that, and especially also related to the other panelists, that the odds will be relational. The odds that you are going to confront will sometimes be about you so much that you won't get empathy, full empathy from others. In other words, the odds will need you to rise up and face them, whether it's at a personal space, the things that you are confronted with. You must be the node that solves. You use what is around you to solve things. It is for that reason that the lack of solve mentality that we now have, that we sit in boardrooms more often than actually we think actually sitting in a boardroom is work. We sit in boardrooms and we go overseas and do excursions, but we still have so much crime. We still have domestic violence increasing. We still have potholes. At one point, I was almost a professor of potholes because I use this example always. We have smelly streets. And our excuse is that there is no capacity. There is. You are the capacity. These municipalities that have unpainted roads and the major problems of this country have people in positions of power that should be solving them. So your generational challenges, as I read and as I observe them from outside, are related to a senior generation that is permanently hung up on self-applause. And you should disrupt this. You know, it would actually be fine if we are hung up on self-applause every June for Youth Month, every August for Women's Month, but are trusting you with your challenges as well. We hear something other than our achievements. Your generational challenges are related to professionals that are addicted to the boardroom and formulaic and formatted planning. You can't just be doing that because it means that you have been so captured by plans from the global north that everything that you do is to just fit into specific formats. That they are your generational challenges are about the perpetual validation schemes that are masquerading as science and innovation. That actually we believe that we have scientists in this country and they are very highly rated, but what they do is validate what others have done. It was clear, this was very clear during COVID, but it is even worse because the machines in the science labs in your universities are bought from elsewhere and they are serviced from elsewhere with our taxpayers' money. And we call ourselves scientists. That there is a sweet poison called appreciation of artificial intelligence. As I was sitting in a UNESCO webinar early this week, where the scientists from other countries are showing that they map out what is it that they gain from the promulgation of digitization in what they call the prosperity for in shared prosperity. And we are not worried about that. What we're doing is a consumerist kind of perpetuation of AI, blind as to who actually gains from it. We're sitting with a generational issue of pompous disciplines who are auditing every sphere of life from the point of view of distrust that had developed during coloniality in terms of auditing, in terms of planning that must be fixed before you even know what you are planning for, and so on. And lastly, we are sitting with an education system still that is overly prescriptive, that is not allowing, especially at MA and PhD level, for room for people to be who they are and innovate in the true sense of the word. So all I want to say to all of this is secure the grade against all odds in order to be able to sit in those tables. I also want to say that no one knows the odds in a relational way for you as a woman or a man who is Black, who is has a disability, and whatever identities, they are relational in terms of who feels what you feel. That is why the only person who will rise up against the odds is someone who has secured the grade and is able to speak from their perspective. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. In Sesotho, we say, "Kereke itswile, ha re tsamaye." Powerful. I think very, very powerful. So our next poll has just come out. Which area of support do you feel is the hardest to find as a student? Those are your options there. Please remember to click on the most applicable option and click on the submit button. Once you do that, the poll will move away. Prof, before we let you go, and this is we getting into our Q&A segment now, I want to ask our audience to already get their hands up. If you would like to ask a question to any of our panelists, this is a moment where you can put our hands up. Our technical team will enable your microphone, and once you acknowledged, you can go ahead and ask your question. I want to be first in line in jumping in with the questions, yeah, and abuse my moderator rights. Prof, you spoke a lot, and I think this generation, the current generation, you spoke a lot around personal gains, what our degrees have, what the opportunities that are open to us have, and what they do for us. And I think the sweetness of social media in opening up a world in terms of networks, people we otherwise would not be able to engage with, also bring unintended or maybe intended, it's in its design, a over exaggeration of, so my degree is for personal gain. We almost in graduation season again at the University of the Free State now in December, and we'll be seeing on LinkedIn, I have just graduated my master's, I have just graduated my PhD. And I want to ask the question, for what? Outside of just personal gain, outside of putting my, stellar achievements out there for everybody to see what I'm made of, and obviously to celebrate and to get applauded. You've mentioned all these challenges. Do these degrees, do these accolades, do these things even matter in shaping society, and what's our role in it? I think as young people, we've sort of stepped back and said, well, I seen the chats, I'm not qualified enough, I speak too softly, I am from a disadvantaged background, or I'm from the University of the Free State, I'm not from UCT. Oh, I'm still waiting for another degree, I'm still waiting for another bursary, I'm still waiting for Golden Key to recognize me. So in trying to summarize my question, beyond personal gain, beyond accumulating the qualifications and the positions, is there space for our degrees for social change and for changing the potholes, for making governments better, for making institutions better? Is there space for that?
Absolutely. In fact, this is the area where we need to remind ourselves that our fate is in the hands of those who have received favor in a way of being through our institutions. We must imbibe pressure of saying, what is it that I can do? If my education is worth anything, what sort of solutions can I use it and the positions that I'm occupying to do more than silo specialization and silo excellence. It's not that we mustn't be excited about our degrees. They are based on sweat and dedication and grit. We must, absolutely. But we must also worry about what sphere of influence. First of all, we need to talk about what exactly are the concrete skills that we are getting, not only for industry, but for social change. And I'm saying not only. The skills can be imagined in terms of what industry wants, but there is also a kind of agenda setting, spaces that we should be part of to advance the society from the rut that it is in. And I'm putting ourselves as the problem here also, Evodia, because this generation of former liberation fighters, as well as people who've worked very hard for this country, has done so well, but we mustn't hold the youth into ransom by formatting everything such that it actually is streamlined in silos, that there are no conversations that make it possible for us to, there are lawyers here, even in my panel. I was fascinated, just to give an example, by the fact that the South African Human Rights Commission is actually going from court to court now, pleading and pushing for the right to execute its findings on human rights, because we have over formatted spaces, even those that should unblock things for our communities to receive water. And when the Human Rights Commission makes findings on certain institutions not performing their job well, those institutions can just refuse to execute this. And some court would then say, no, your limit, the limit of, according to some act of your sphere of influence as the Human Rights Commission ends here. You can't force these people to take your recommendations. It's something like that. So if we really had people who are learned, people who are not only learned in technicality of the law, we would be having forums where we negotiate and have a deliberative framework about how to unblock policy and law such that in the end it serves the real issues of community. And that's a very small example that I'm giving. There are so many things that are just stalling. And it is because actually when you get to the bottom of it, the very people who are trusted to deal with them are the very people who are fighting each other in these boardrooms, just making sure that the technicality is not unblocking the problems, but is actually creating them.
Very interesting. So thank you so much for that answer, Prof. I'm going to ask from our audience if you have a hand. I saw a couple of hands go up, but I also saw a couple of them go down. So this is your opportunity to please raise your hand if you have a question for any of our panelists. I know some of them were already flooding in throughout the conversations. Amahle, your microphone should be enabled. Please remember to unmute and ask your question. Mahle, remember to unmute your microphone. Okay, while we're getting Amahle to unmute her microphone, let's move to Oratile. Oratile, are you able to unmute? Oh, Oratile is off. Amahle? Okay, so while we're waiting there, there is a question that came in around, should there be a shift from bursaries to entrepreneurship? So what would you say to shift? Should we shift focus to entrepreneurship and less focus on higher education and funding? Where should focus be exactly? And that is to anyone on our panel that wants to take on this question.
Can I tackle this question with Evodia? Is it fine?
Go for it.
Okay. Like, I've seen the sudden push towards entrepreneurship from a corporate stance and from a government perspective, and also from a university level. Selfishly, as an entrepreneur, I support it, but I think there is a lot of value. There's still a lot of value in work and employees and what universities are producing. I think the challenge that we are facing as a country is that the economy is not growing enough to absorb all of these labor market entrants that are coming into the economy. And that is the core problem. Insofar as substituting bursaries for entrepreneurship, I don't think we need to go away with bursaries because universities produce skilled laborers. But there seems to be a mismatch between what the universities are producing and what industry is requiring. And universities are big whales. They are very difficult to move. By a Prof would agree with me that it takes no less than 3 years to make a difference or to change a degree, right? So how do we supplement now these skills that need to be developed maybe in 6 months to say, okay, you already got a degree in that field. Here is a certification you can go and do to meet that need. And we don't need to go to university and start a new degree. You know, the other thing young people need to understand is that you are not your degree, guys. A degree is there to show that you showed up to a place for 3 years and you have these certain competencies. It's not to say that you studied law, you must go stand in court. You know, and it is not to say because you did engineering, you can't go into business. Understand, guys, you are a problem solver, you know, and you have a duty to solve the issues of society, whether that is through you establishing an NGO, an NPC, or you being an entrepreneur. But your purpose in society is to solve societal issues. You must take it upon yourself because you are part of the 5% that have the privilege go to university, and that must not be taken for granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuma. Prof. Paul?
I just wanted to add to what Chuma is saying, especially when he's talking about the economy. You know, when I'm talking about leeway to solve your problems, it, it has always puzzled me why our economists, for example, only comment on appeasing external markets. There's got to be a way in which we set our own agenda. There's got to be a way in which you get an economist that can say within South Africa and don't abandon the mission to appease the external markets. Although I wonder whether US is actually in a mission to appease us, or Japan is in a mission to appease us as much as we appease them. But beyond that, what is the value of ensuring that you map out the linkages between rural areas and cities in a way that enables easy communication and thus improvises in terms of the manner in which people can reach cities easily, or how you create feeder points closer to people so that they can actually use some kind of supply chain related economic abilities to develop their own entrepreneurship. Before we even talk about whether the economy is growing, and we know that even in its best, the economy grows, but the poor people become poorer. Who is designing local economic development actively? If all of our economics that we teach in universities is about this grand economy that must grow and how we must appease the markets from elsewhere so that they actually are able to create jobs, which they are not going to create in msinga, or if they're not going to create necessarily actively or deliberately, but it's almost like it will trickle. We need to get into a space where we allow new thinking, and the way that we are formatting both education and structures that deal with these things is such that we've blocked the energy for youth to come and sit there and be creative about solutions.
Absolutely right. I think there's quite a lot. Looking at the time, I'm thinking I want to dig into these conversations even deeper. Bokang, let's hear from you before we move on to our next question.
I just wanted to echo on what Prof and Chuma said, and someone just mentioned it on the chat box about I think the problem that we have now is in the higher education space. The higher education space designs disciplines to be monotonous. So if you're a lawyer, if you're studying law, you must go be a lawyer. If you're doing accounting, you must go be an accountant. But what we do need right now is interdisciplinary studies, I think in almost every degree, because we are outside the university, we're dealing with a socio-political world that requires socio-political disciplines. I remember the LLB degree at UFS got recalled at some point because of the way their their curriculum was designed. And this current curriculum infuses humanities modules. And I think a lot more disciplines need to do that, so that when we get into the working world, we are offering multidisciplinary approaches to crisis.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think what just to pull together what our panelist is also highlighting is that your degree is more than just understanding the theoretical background of the discipline and reproducing what is already in the textbooks. I like to borrow from Tshegofatso's story. So here I am, a microbiology student. He could have gotten stuck in understanding all the lab work, the technical work, but he got involved as an RC. Someone said, but I'll never be in my field as someone in education, I can only become a tutor. I want to tell you, in my residence, my RC finance, and that's the residence committee member that deals with finance, is a law student. But guess what? They are learning how to deal with budgets. They are learning how to fundraise, how to support young entrepreneurs, how to make sure the residence is financially sustainable, and that we're able to take care of all the needs of the house while still raising money. So growing the wallet, in other words. So I want to highlight there are a lot of opportunities to hone those skills. I don't want to say your degree is not enough. Your degree is enough, but enterprising that degree needs you to have a certain skill set to be able to go sit in those boardrooms and change the policies, as Prof. Pearl has highlighted, to be aware of the socioeconomic issues and how they need to shift. I think all of us particularly have a role to play. So I want to highlight to you, we do have there was another question that says, universities are promising us degrees with 4 IR skills. Have universities become businesses? That was a comment from one of our Secure the Grad guests, but also want to ask, you have one more opportunity to ask a question before we wrap our conversation up. Remember, you can raise your virtual hand. We'll recognize you, unmute your microphone, and you can continue. While we're waiting to get in the questions, I want to ask, do we have any final touching or outgoing points from any of our panelists? So in wrapping up your conversation today and motivating students why it's even worth it to secure the grad against all odds, what would your parting words be to them? For our while we're getting our panels to speak, remember your last poll has come up on the screen. Select your option and then continue. Tshegofatso, let's start with you. What would your parting motivation be of why does it even matter securing the grad against all odds?
I just want to make sure my mic is on.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
Tshegofatso, I see your mic is off again.
Is it on? I think it's perfect now.
Now it's on.
Okay, great. So I think, apologies for that. I think the most important thing I would say that all of us as individuals, we need to always make sure that we embrace each and every stage that we find ourselves in within our own individual journeys. And we shouldn't be afraid to, be afraid of challenges and most importantly, failure, because I think failure is the one that limits us from actually going out to seek opportunities, new skills, new, what would people say and all of that. So I feel like it's very important to always embrace those specific journeys. And I think in our pursuit to go ask for help and reaching out to other people, reaching out to, sponsors, people that help us in our journey, it's always very important to understand the individuality of every person and the function and or the duties of every person in their own lives, which is to always help yourself first before trying to help anyone else. So I think that will help us to deal with expectations in terms of, if I ask Tshego for help, because Tshego is always in a position to help people, he will help either way. What if Tshego says no that time? So there's always needs to be that expectation that, what, some people might not be able to assist, some people will assist. And even me as Tshego, I got to also learn that in as much as I help other people, it's not always expected that they will always come and agree to helping me, or that expectation is very important to understand. And I think whether moving from undergrad to postgrad studies or transitioning to a workplace, it's always important to be open-minded when it comes to learning. Whether you are irrespective of your degree or qualification or what level of qualification that is, whenever you're in a room that fosters or that is an open has an open platform for you to learn, always be willing to learn. And like I said in the chat box, is always be motivated to learn a new skill. It doesn't have to be able to play a piano sometimes, or to actually speak, because you at a work function you might be asked to be an MC. So always be able to learn a new skill, a new style of doing things. The one approach doesn't necessarily, so you can be able to do one thing in multiple and diverse different ways. So I think those are some of the things that you need to always learn. And I think one thing that I've also highlighted, whenever in any space that you find yourself in, be able to identify and understand that specific place. Where are you at the specific time? Be able to identify the people that you will need to succeed in the specific place that you find yourself in. Be able to identify resources. Resources is not just about your laptop, it's also about your the people that you find in that specific place. Identify resources, identify who. Now I already identify. I was actually, by the way, I was speaking to Chuma on LinkedIn as we speaking now. So I've identified a resource that I know that will actually move whatever opportunity that I actually want to, develop myself in. As we were speaking now, I got a message from him. So meaning that we managed to identify the place that we are in, identify the resources that we find ourselves in, and most importantly, how to actually execute or use these specific resources that we find ourselves in. And most importantly, find yourself a mentor, find yourself a guide, build your own support system. Sometimes from home, we don't have that support structure. Be able to build it in your community or the people that you find yourself with. And I would say that one message that I put is that overuse these people. Overuse Miss Ovodia, overuse Tabiso, who's in the technical team, overuse everyone that is willing to give you that opportunity to, to build you and build with you. And resilience and adaptability are always key. So each obstacle is an opportunity to grow, and most importantly, always stay grounded to your purpose and the impact you want to make. So this will also keep ensuring that you're always motivated during your difficult times. And I think on my side, I have an open door policy at work. So I have an open door policy on my social media platform. So I will be able to assist as much as much as I can. And if I can assist, we will refer you to Together as One RSA, which is an organization that I founded. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've unfortunately reached the end of our webinar. We will not have an opportunity to get a final parting motivational insights from the rest of the panel. But with that, I want to ask, as we go through the last protocols of the webinar, I want to ask that our panelists please put something in the chat. What is your parting motivational message for our guests today? I want to announce our winners for today, those who have been engaging. As True Secure the Grad Style, we want to congratulate the following people. Tsebile Kulu, Xulu. Elda, you are a regular winner. Congratulations, Andile Maduo, Tepiso Mashinini, and Ultimate Ngobeni. Congratulations, you are our Secure the Grad winners. Remember to send us an email to securethegrad@ufs.ac.za and indicate your student number, your name, student number, as well as contact details of where we can get hold of you. It is almost exam season. It's that final stretch, last tests, and we want to make sure that we crowd you with support. Remember, our GPS contact center is available. You can call us on 051 401 9111. Press option 2, otherwise email us gps@ufs.ac.za. Our success coaches are waiting eagerly to engage with you. Remember, you can also WhatsApp us if you don't have access to email, or calls on 087-240-6370. Alternatively, if you want to speak to an academic advisor and you don't want to wait for next year, some of you spoke about how do I align my career with what I'm currently studying. The advising team is there with you. The respective campuses, Bloemfontein is advising at ufs.ac.za, Kwakwa campus advising QQ at ufs.ac.za. And for those of you on the South Campus, advising SC at ufs.ac.za. Remember, you can also follow them on Facebook as well as Instagram. If you need tutoring support on all 3 of our campuses, you can email us on astep@ufs.ac.za. The Secure the Grad team also has a study session tomorrow lined up. Remember, on the Bloemfontein campus, we will be at Lehakwe Residence on the Bloemfontein campus, and that is your active learning study session. You all heard from our panelists. Before we get the jobs, before we get the business, before we are change makers in our society, it's important that we secure the grad, and we're going to help you do exactly that. Join us. We have lovely prizes up for grabs. Excuse me, season finale is taking my voice away. If, like me, you've lost your voice bundles, don't worry, the session has been recorded and you can watch it on our YouTube channel, and that is Secure the Grad. Remember to also follow us on Instagram, and do tell us whether this webinar was a hit or a miss. The link is in the chat there for you. You can hear my voice. It's like I'm crying because I don't want the session to end. But remember, we do have also success coaches that are waiting for you, whether it is to hook you up with a career. Remember to also follow a career pathway, and that is on your email. Ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of our webinar. A huge thank you to our panelists, and a huge thank you to all of you for being in the webinar today. Remember to catch these recordings, and that is a thank you from our side.